So, I decided to go ahead and ruin my ex-sister-in-law's marriage. She was getting married, and it was supposed to be a special day. But little did she know I was plotting something to get my revenge for what she did to my marriage and why I hate her so much. Have you ever had the experience of owning everything in the world, only to watch it fall apart just because human trust and love are fickle things and change with slight provocation? Well, I've had the first-hand experience of possessing everything a woman can desire and then losing it all in front of my own eyes, despite trying to hold on to it to the very end. When I met John, I'd only been 24 years old, and I'd been during university exam days when two fools caught themselves reading under the lamplights after the lights were turned off in the dormitories. Both of us were business and administration students, and John was my senior by a year. It wasn't love at first sight. No, we fell for each other after studying together night after night after night, and when John graduated, he took different jobs around the campus for a year. Just to stay close to me at the moment I graduated, we moved in together, just as John had secured a job in a company's management location. Suddenly, life had become too perfect for me, and we spent 5 years together. Before tying the knot, I became his lawful wife. John was very close to his family and often visited them with me or without me. I became close to Sarah, but there was something about her that kept me from opening up to her as a friend would. Caleb was nice, a caring guy who never differentiated between me and his own sister. The four of us had been friends until we weren't. Before marriage, John and I had not faced any problems in our relationship, but things took an ugly turn right after we returned from our honeymoon and visited John's family. Where I'd been excited to become a part of the Stevens family, I was surprised at the sudden change in their behavior, especially that of Sarah's. I didn't pay much attention to her because I was happy with John. We just became official and begun our lives together. Then, after 3 years of marriage, John had begun acting frustrated around me. At first, I was confused and I wondered if I'd done something that he simply did not like. But I knew that it wasn't how he was. Whatever bothered him, he used to tell me instead of keeping it in his heart and becoming detached. That's how we'd survive so many years together. We'd face every single problem head on and had to learn to lean on each other through thick and thin. And that's why this change in behavior has just come to shock me. Well, after a couple weeks of bearing his frustration, I decided it's time to confront him. That's when he burst out. All the pent-up frustration and anger towards me was released, and I simply could not believe the words that he said. Well, he accused me of cheating on him with not one but 2 guys. He was absolutely furious to find out that I had been such a woman, and had successfully deceived him for many years. The accusation was too harsh for me to even want to accept, and despite myself, I could not say a word. I was shocked, stunned, absolutely horrified. John took my silence as acceptance of all the accusations. Then he told me that he was confused about why I was even with him. When I'd pulled myself out of the initial shock that I had, well, I demanded that he tell me from where he heard such appalling lies, and how on earth had he even believed something like that about me, his wife, and the love of his life, as he had so many times before said. After a slight hesitation, he told me how his sister, Sarah, Sarah's seen me with a man. I'd been furious and outright rejected John's claims, but I was a couple weeks late. I had no idea what Sarah had fed him all this time. He kept insisting that he trusted his sister because she had proof. Instead of further discussing the matter with John, I decided to approach Sarah herself. I'd wanted to know what she'd seen and what made her think that I was secretly meeting somebody behind my husband's back. I just wanted to know what made her hurl such accusations in my directions. After so many years of being part of the family, what had I done so wrong that she had taken such a cruel step to me? I honestly just didn't know. Now, here's another mistake I'd made. I did not get her alone to talk. Instead, I blurted out the question at the dinner table with my mother-in-law and younger brother-in-law in attendance. I still remember that awkward silence that had been fallen, and how Sarah had met each and every question staring with sorrow heavy on her face. It's been an act. I'd been a fool to believe her. Sarah had asked me about the man I'd met twice outside the office. At first, I didn't understand who she could even be talking about since I dealt with many very important clients, and I handled all their accounts. But when I realized that she's been talking about Mr. Peter Harrison, a VIP customer of the bank that I've been working at, I'd met him inside and outside my office many times, and that's where Sarah got the bright idea that I was secretly involved with somebody else. Instead of confronting me about what she had witnessed, she spun a tale of lies around a grain of truth. I tried to clear my name by telling my in-laws about Mr. Harrison, even risking the violations of the terms of confidential agreement signed between me and the clients. I should have realized that it wasn't going to be enough, not when Sarah had talked about me to all members of the family. She'd fed them her imagination and her own interpretations. My in-laws focused on the name instead of the context, and when I tried to tell them that Mr. Harrison had just been a client that I've been handling the case of, they believed that I've been doing some shady business with a rich guy. When I'd realized that my words had absolutely no impact on my husband or his mood at the dinner table, I decided to clear the air once we were alone. I was absolutely just baffled at his behavior anyways, and his simple lack of interest in me when I started discussing the subject again. My life for my husband had blinded me. I took his silence as his trust was restored in me, and when he came back to our apartment after spending the weekend at his mother's, John's behavior simply did not change. It was more confusing than ever, and one night I'd planned to do something I had not done before. I'd unblocked his phone as he'd slept and went through his messages and emails. Sure enough, Sarah was telling him all this stuff about me. She'd shared some photos of my clients with a couple of them in comfortable settings. She clicked them at such angles that they were easy to misinterpret. In an absolute rage, I had not thought twice before sending warning messages to my sister-in-law from my husband's phone. I told her that if she kept up with her lies, I was not going to let her be. Sarah had not dared reply when the phone was in my hand. But the next day, John was furious at me. He accused me of going through his personal belongings without permission when I'd been the one acting out. What? I dared him to go through my records as well if he suspected me. It's been a mistake that still haunts me even today, but in my defense, I had not thought that Sarah would play such a cheap trick. Sarah, see, she has been far more creative than I could give credit to her for. I don't know how, but she'd left a string of messages on my phone from a number unknown, and John had been the first one to read them in my phone's archive. In my defense, I didn't know whose number it was, and I hadn't replied to any of them, but everything that was mentioned in the message was too much to ignore. The adult content on the messages was clearly from someone who knew me well, and I'd been sure that it's been Sarah. John moved out of our apartment after that, and back with his family without giving me a chance to even utter an explanation, and I had nothing to tell him either. Later, I tried to contact his mom and his younger brother, but both of them told me that they're simply disappointed in me for hurting John the way that I did. They were mad at me for cheating on him, for seeking other men behind his back. They refused to listen to my protest and explanations and told me to never contact them again. The last message John left for me was that both of us have been together for a long time, and it was about time we took a break from seeing each other and see where we stood after that. It's been very hard for me to believe that something like that would happen to someone like me, the woman who'd given so much for the man she loved, only to lose his trust and affection to a lie. It'd been too much for me to take, and I'd found myself struggling with acute depression. John and I spent 3 months apart, and during that time we got to talk only once. By then I could tell there was no saving my marriage because John's mind was full of Sarah's poison to the brim. There had been no room for me left in his heart. That's when we decided to divorce and part ways. Our divorce was settled with little to no drama. John had wanted everything he'd spent on me and given to me back, honestly. It hurt me a lot, but I complied with his request because somehow I was still in love with him. When I'd handed over my share of the apartment and everything he'd purchased for me, including the gifts, I never turned back. But that did not mean I'd move on. It's been 2 years, and for 2 years I've tried to date and meet new people, but I can't. My heart still lies shattered, and I can't move on no matter how hard I try. He'd left me alone, a woman who did not have any peace or place or anyone to go to. And whenever I think about John and everything that I've lost, I end up thinking about the woman who'd been mastermind behind the ploy against me. Sarah Stevens is the reason I'm here on this platform, sharing my story that I've kept to myself for a very long time. I hold her wedding invitation in my hand, the one I stole yesterday when I spotted her. She was at the station when I saw her. I'd been curious to know how the woman who destroyed my life was doing, and I could barely restrain myself from lashing out at her when I saw her glowing with happiness. It looked like she had the whole world at her feet. Sarah Stevens is in love, and she's getting married to Mason Day, who's John's friend and a boss at work. No matter how hard I try, I can't let Sarah get her happy ending after ruining me. I can't do it. I have a few ideas on how to get back at her. It's all I can think about since yesterday, and I know that I can't have more regrets and missed opportunities on my conscience again. I'm gonna go ahead with my plan, or two, but I find myself wondering if I'll be wrong to get back at her. If not, then what can I do? Update number 1. Hey guys, there are many reprimanding comments on my first post, and I understand what each and every one of you have been trying to tell me. Revenge isn't going to bring me happiness that I've lost. I know. I'm also aware that playing Sarah's game on her won't make me any different from her. But guys, let me tell you, I'm restless. I can't erase her radiant face from my mind. How could she even smile like that after doing something so cruel to me? I just respected the people who tried to make me look at the bright side of all this experience I'm going through. In the comment section, you guys were very helpful. Yes, I parted ways from John before he could leave me in the future for something else. If not this, because he's been a weak man. But this has nothing to do with my desire to exact revenge on Sarah. Those who advised me to let Sarah begin her new life because karma's going to get her back for what she's done. I ask you, what is karma? Once I'd believe in it too, but I've waited for 2 years, and it doesn't look like Stevens is going to face it anytime soon, unless I deliver karma right to her doorstep. And that's what I've already set my plan into motion to do. See, Sarah Stevens thinks that she owns the world. She does. She relies on others to do her stuff, to serve her, and in doing so, she doesn't realize the amount of information she left behind. This is exactly what has worked in my favor so far. You see, after my first post, I submitted 3 weeks leave request at my workplace. It's about darn time I take break from work, which I've been doing like crazy to keep my mind from wandering in the past. When it was granted, I began tailing Sarah as she went around the city, just arranging for her dream wedding. That's where I'll hit her. For Sarah Stevens, the event is very important. She's investing more than she's ever done for anything else. Often, I see her brothers tag along with her, and they too are holding back when it comes to their, dear sister's wedding. Well, I plan to show them her real face if they haven't seen it already. Yesterday, I got my hands on a list of Sarah's bookings for her special day. She'd left her stuff with her helper, Jenna, whom she'd hired for the wedding duration to accompany her. She's a poor girl who's absolutely terrified of Sarah. And after a few coaxing words and some cash, she let me take the pictures and her booking confirmations. I have her wedding band contract details, the menu she's deciding to use for the wedding caterers, information on her deal with the photographers and videographers, as well as the details about the outdoor wedding venue that she has booked. That's right. It's a beautiful place, and it just seems like yesterday when John and I visited the same venue. I trusted her then because I had no reason to. Only now I realize that she's been playing the game for a long time. But why? Well, I'm going to find out. Well, this is the update for now. I've got some calls to make, some plans to overthrow. I'll update you guys soon. Update number 2. Hey everyone. I see a few comments on my last post, but I'm glad to know that there are some who can understand my situation, as well as my intention to get back at Sarah for everything that she's done to me. Only those who suffered a loss, as I have, will be able to understand the nightmare I've been living in for the past few years. See, Sarah's wedding and my scheming to ruin it has become something I look forward to every single day. After years, I feel excited every morning when I wake up. I'm sure that once I get back at Sarah and tell everyone what she's done to me, only then I'll be able to move on. I'm telling you guys, she's an absolute vile woman, and everyone around her should just see her true colors for who she is. She's hurt me without any apparent reason, and God knows how many people she's hurt over the years. I talked about Sarah during therapy, and I talked to my therapist that I believed I'd only be able to move on when Sarah would beg for my forgiveness, and the only way to make it possible is to make her experience a loss. As expected, my therapist has tried to talk me out of it, but I'd let the thought keep me going, and here I am now. Well, I've set the stage. All that's left is to see how Sarah's events will play out. She hasn't suspected anything so far, nor does her family, and I hope that it'll remain so. After this is done, I know that there's no way John will accept me again, nor will I want to be a part of his life anymore anyways. Well, this is for me to find some peace, and for Sarah to feel what I'd felt all those years ago. I want John to realize the mistake that he's made, and live his life with regrets knowing that he's given up on his love, not the other way around. I can't wait for Sarah's big day to come, and I'm going to be there to watch her suffer. Update number 3. Hey guys, so things escalated more than I predicted, by the way. Yesterday was Sarah's big day, and I'd pulled some strings to be there among the guests. I'd put on a vibrant red gown and had let my hair down in loose curls. I'd changed so much over the years that John simply did not even recognize me. Even though he did stop to take a second look, the distance worked in my favor. I tried my best to steer clear of Stevens during the event, or whatever was left of it. When I arrived at the wedding venue, there was a commotion. The guests roamed here and there, confused, with little effort. I'd switched the outdoor setting to indoor, and had reduced much of the decoration. The staff had suspected me, but I had a copy of their deal with Sarah, and our old pictures together to convince them that I was family. Changing the venue had been a far-fetched idea, because the staff could have just contacted Sarah, but to my relief, they had not, as the outdoor venue had gotten booked instantly after I canceled Sarah's booking. Once the guests had settled into my dimly lit hall, The bride and groom's family waited for the wedding band. When it didn't show up, I noticed the family making these frantic phone calls and overheard Caleb talking to them on the phone. Later, all the guests heard the bride shout at her brother to find out who switched the booking date. This matter, had not been dealt with at all. When the family faced another problem, the catering staff, they did not show up and there was no food. So, what do we do now? Within a couple hours, it became evident that the wedding could not go on. The guests had started to leave. They were in a foul mood and kept telling Grace Stevens that they're simply disappointed. That's when I took my chance to make my presence known. The Stevens were shocked to see me, and it did not take long for Sarah to put two and two together. See, she'd known instantly that it was me who decided to ruin her special day. I will never forget the expression on her face and on John's face. They were horrified and had the guts to be mad at me. That's when I told them to ask what brought the chaos on. I told them to ask Sarah what she's done for me to do something like this to her. Furious, Sarah shouted at me that she'd seen me for who I was, and that's why she made sure to kick me out of her family. I felt as if she'd been jealous of me becoming part of their family, and she was far from feeling apologetic for it. John and Grace had been shocked to hear such truth from Sarah's mouth. She was crying and cursing me while her fiancé stood aside, watching the true face of the woman he was going to marry. When Sarah admitted to everything in front of everybody, I didn't buy it. Not when she kept insisting that she's done her brother a favor by getting someone like me out of his life. At the exchange, John had turned to me with an apology and regret written all over his face. That had been my cue to leave. I've avenged the hurt that Sarah caused me, the humiliation I'd felt in front of John's family and friends. I've lived in agony all these years, and now I simply feel exhausted, empty. The revenge plan had consumed my thoughts for days, and now that I've gotten back at her, I don't know where to turn my focus to next. John called me last night. At first, I did not attend to his call, but when he kept calling and sending messages, I had no choice but to hear what he had to say. Yeah, as expected, he had nothing but apologies. He'd let anger get the better of him, and his blinding trust in his sisters had made him believe her. I listened to everything he had to say without saying a word because I had none. Nothing. I'd cry all the tears and said all the words in my heart. I simply had nothing to offer him. When he was done, I told him to never call me again because I've moved on. I'd like to thank the people who actually tried to understand me instead of trying to stop me from ruining Sarah's life. In my defense, I saved her fiancé from a lifetime of betrayal. I believe if a person can be selfish enough to destroy somebody's life, somebody close, then that person's capable of destroying so many more. Once a liar, always a liar. Update number 4. Well, after the last update, I had not thought that I'd be back here again, but it turns out my story's far from over yet. As I'd suspected, Sarah was not truly sorry for me. Not when she was cursing and crying in front of me on her big day. It's all been her desperation to set things right ever since then. Sarah Stevens came to see me earlier today when I was at work. My bosses were not happy, but I just requested half leave and got Sarah out of my workplace as fast as humanly possible. She told me that she was surprised at the way I ruined her wedding because she simply never thought I'd have the guts to do something like that. It was the first time the two of us were having some sort of decent conversations. And, well, I took the chance and asked the question which has bothered me all these years. Why me? Why? Well, turns out Sarah told me that she's never liked me. I was exactly the type of girl she hated at school and could not tell that I'd trample all over my brother's heart. She'd hated the attention her family paid me, and how I'd been changing their lives. Before me, Sarah had been the daughter of the house. Her brother had been close to her, and her mother had valued her opinions. It all changed when I'd become part of their lives. Her younger brother had tried to befriend me, and Grace began to adore me as her own daughter. Sarah had felt that I was robbing her of all the affection and importance she enjoyed the years. She hated that I was an orphan, and got to play the damsel in distress role for her brother to swoop in and save the day. She didn't want her brother to marry somebody he trusted blindly. She assured me that she would have let us stay married had John taken my side and chose to believe me instead of her. That was the honest truth. Even I could not deny that. Sarah had tried to prove that I wasn't worthy of her brother, but her scheming confirmed that it was John who wasn't worthy of me. After telling me all this, Sarah told me that it wasn't the reason she'd come to talk. See, she assured me that I've made a big mistake by ruining her wedding, and she was not somebody who would bury the hatchet easily. She told me to keep watching my back. I know what many of you will say after reading this, but in my defense, have I chosen to ignore Sarah and move on with my life, I would not have started this chain of vengeance. She's already hurt me enough, and I have no idea what she'll do to me next. What is truly my fault that things have turned out this way? Guys, please let me know. Update number 5. Final update posted by OP. Hey guys, so the response of my last update's overwhelming, honestly. I had not even expected to see comments from so many people, especially not after what I've done despite you guys trying to talk to me. It's been 3 long weeks since the last update, and let me tell you that Sarah did come after me, but she had not been as careful as before. She's already taken me down once, and I believe she thought it would be no problem once again. This time, karma did get to her without me doing anything. It's true that anger and the fire of vengeance blinds a person and makes him do the things he never would have done otherwise. In her attempt to get back at me, Sarah had resorted to cheap tricks. A week ago, she visits my house when I was asleep. The house had been locked, so she had not been able to get in. But my neighbors had spotted her hovering around my house. They tried to call me and ask if I knew her, but my phone had been on silent. According to my neighbors, when she had not found a way to get in, Sarah had targeted my car instead. She tried to pour sugar into my car's gas tank, and the kids from the house next door recorded a video of her in the act, while their parents had called the police. I'd come to know the entire incident only when the police knocked at my door and asked if I knew Sarah. See, it turns out Sarah has tried to lie to the police. She told them she was my friend and was just playing a harmless trick on me. I told the police that she's lying. As a result, the police ended up dragging Sarah to the police station. I've been relieved for a while, but when John tried calling me again and asking for settling Sarah's case, I called him an absolute coward and refused to even help Stevens at that point. Taking advantage of Sarah's captivity, I filed a lawsuit against her. What she's done to me falls under criminal law, and she can end up in jail for it. I know many of you will just insist on letting her be, but I don't know. Let me assure you that she was not even slightly apologetic. She tried vandalism, and I doubt she'd let things slide, that once she's out and about. I don't trust her because of the hatred in her heart and the extent that she can go to destroy somebody else's life. Today it was me, tomorrow it could be anyone. Seeing that Mason's day has called off the engagement as well, and things are hard for John at work, I believe that Mason has also seen something in his fiancée to take such a steep step. If a man truly loves a woman and trusts her, he'll stand against the world for her. John had not done that for me, and Mason had not done that for Sarah either. But in the end, well, both of us have lost the men we loved, and the family's trust for everything we've done. I don't regret getting back at Sarah. Never will, because if anything, my vengeance has brought many things to light. If Sarah's truly innocent and is willing to repent of her mistakes, she can enjoy her free life. Otherwise, she'll have to spend some time behind bars or in a rehabilitation center reserved for prisoners. Whatever happens in the future, well, I hope Sarah realizes her mistakes and vows to never repeat them again. Maybe both of us will find happiness one day. Until then, accept my gratitude for the response and support of all that you have shown. So I just have a question for you guys. Do you agree with OP's vengeance going after Sarah like that? Most commenters down below in the original post were all for it, but I'd say about 40% were not really okay with it, and they said they think OP went too far. So, that leaves me with the question, do you guys think that she went too far? Drop your comments down below, tell me exactly how you would go about handling this situation, and also tell me at the end when, well, Sarah's marriage was starting to get broken up, and, well, we know what happened after that. Tell me again what you would do. My name's Mr. Reddito. I read stories every single day. If you're new, make sure you press that subscribe button for daily videos. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Stop on by tomorrow, see what we're up to. And remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.